we talk about the SAG after a strike at this. I mean, I think we've been doing it for like months at this point, like since even before it started.
Well, I think
And
we're on what, the 109th day?
it's yeah, it's literally been a little over 3.5 months now. And you got to remember, going all the way back to before the strike started, they gave it an extra week. They were like, "Oh, we're making good progress. We're gonna push this off for a week." So at that time, you were thinking, "Oh, this is gonna get done. Like, we're not gonna have a strike." And then we have a double strike, the first one in like literally since Ronald Reagan was the president of SAG back in like was the 60s. And even though the WGA has got their deal, the DGA worked out their deal pretty quickly. The actors are still striking, and they've been working on this now nonstop, basically for the past week or so. I mentioned at the start of the show today that there was a report. I think it was in the Wrap, I believe, and it was like one of those insider things. It wasn't like an official statement from either side, where the feeling is on the studio side that if they can't figure stuff out in about a week or so's time, which is coming up in the next few days now, this week, they're gonna shut it down for like until next year, because at that point, if
Did
they
they give
can't
a
get a
date
deal
on
this
that?
year. Hmm?
Did they give a date on that? I didn't
they
see
didn't
that. I
they
didn't see
didn't they
that,
didn't give
but
like an exact date. They just kind of gave a rough time frame. And
yeah.
like the key to that was basically, and their rationale, like it makes sense, because the reason why that, and again, it's this like an insider source
Well,
who doesn't want to speak
we
out
had
publicly.
already talked about that too. I mean, that's the logical move. All of these movies shut down for weeks, usually at least a week or two for Thanksgiving, and then a week or two for Christmas. So you can't get anything started and cast and this and that and the other and prep with schedules. It doesn't make sense if they don't figure it out now. It doesn't make
Yeah,
sense to figure it out
yeah,
before January
yeah. Like the
because
fall,
there's nothing that happens.
exactly. Like the fall
It's
TV
all going to
season is
get.
lost. Like not, you
I mean,
can't put people out on to. I
already.
mean, maybe you can put people out to promote the movies that are still on the schedule, but you really can't, like you said, get production restarted until next year. So
Yeah. And so, sorry, I cut you off. But essentially, our speculation makes sense as well, because that's the general sort of consensus. If you look at the way the business goes, if it's not solved, it's not going to be solved. And you and I were talking about this, what, last week, maybe even the week before. If it doesn't get solved quickly, but I was honestly surprised that because I thought when they took that last break, we were done for. I was like, and then all of a sudden they came back with like renewed vigor. So obviously Dan is saying speculation, everybody. It's just all of our speculation. And apparently this was based off of like somebody said, but I do think it makes sense.
yeah, and just kind of going off of that and talking about where we are today, we know that there's been a lot of coverage around this. We were looking at some articles earlier. I think the one that we were reading was specifically in Deadline, and they were talking about they're getting close to a deal, but they're still like a ways apart on some of the key issues. Like, can like Angelina, can you just tell us, like, because I know that Duncan Crabtree Ireland, he was at a picket line, so they got some quotes from him about this too. And of course, he's like the chief negotiator, if I'm not misquoting that.
As of this weekend, there were a lot of rumors swirling around that people are going to settle. We have an agreement. Things are just like getting like finalized, and they're crossing their T's and their I's, and we're gonna by the end of the week everything's wrapped. That's not what's happening. So they're getting closer. They're finally having really good conversations, but they're still a ways away on a lot of issues. Specifically, it seems AI is the one thing that they don't seem to be getting closer on. Um, as of today, the AMPTP had not yet responded to SAG's counteroffer. The AMPTP did come back with a better version of the sort of revenue sharing.
Residuals, yeah, streaming
So,
residuals, which was like a big. The reason why the talks previously broke down in the latest
yes,
breakdown was because they were like
exactly.
they couldn't agree on that. Yeah.
But the AMPTP did come back with a new framework that might make more sense because unfortunately, as like new members and stuff like that, what SAG had proposed might actually end up hurting the actors in in the long run, whereas the sort of profit sharing of like performance based residual sharing that they are now sorry, the terminology here gets a little, because I don't want to like misquote anything. Can I restart that? We're just gonna restart that. So everything gets a little bit like very technical here, and I don't want to misquote anything, but essentially AMPTP came back after talks devolved and offered a new sort of profit sharing residual idea. SAG has now issued a counter offer of that. It does sound like the AMPTP wants what's best for the actors in a way, as well as obviously themselves in the studio, because that's what they're there for. But it does sound like they generally are working towards something that will work for everyone as far as residuals go. AI seems to be a massive point of contention still. So that is where it sounds like the holdup is coming, but they have agreed to meet tomorrow. Everybody's still picketing. They took a break today. They're going in tomorrow to talks. The talks over the weekend went really, really well, but we're probably at least another 2 weeks away from any sort of actual agreement, at least.
Yeah, and what you were talking about, the revenue sharing situation, it looks like they're coming towards the middle because the studios proposed 7% in their latest proposal. SAG had previously proposed 11, then they came back in their counteroffer to the studio 7% with a 9%. I have a feeling they'll eventually get to 8% and maybe call it a day on that subject.
You know what?
And
I wouldn't be surprised if the AMPTP does agree to the 9%. That's right
9%.
down in the middle. Like, come on,
it's not that far off. I mean, if you were starting at 11 and you got them down to 9, that's a win.
Exactly. So
yeah,
it does sound like they're offering more money up front for actors, and then they are designing a profit sharing mechanism.
It's a new model. Yeah.
It's hard because it's not, you can't really call it like a residual model because it's not really residuals.
It's not the same. Yeah, and you know what? To be honest with you, I don't think you can apply the traditional residual model to streaming shows either.
No, not at all.
So here's the big thing. I think there's a big disconnect. The residuals model that they used to use in traditional broadcast and network TV, you just cannot apply that to streaming. There's this big disconnect, and especially like the average person, and it's a fair assumption to make that things would be similar, but there's a big disconnect in terms of, and even maybe some of the actors in terms of the understanding of how the licensing deals in the back end with the studios work for streaming versus traditional television. Because here's the thing: whenever the way residuals used to work, or for traditional TV still work, is you air an episode of a TV show and your residuals based off that airing. When the show goes into syndication, every time you air an episode, on a per episode basis, the network airing the show in syndication sends out like royalties and residuals, and the actors get it, like studio and the production company and all that. So it's a continuous cycle. So that's why like, shows like Friends, even to this day, if they're in syndication, or like the Goldbergs, which was a big hit on ABC, another sitcom that went into syndication a few years ago, those shows that will continue to pay out the actors for years and years to come. The way it works on streaming is different. On streaming, if your show is on a streaming service, regardless of whether somebody's watching it or not, you're paying to license it to keep it there. It's basically, if you want to think about it this way, if your show is on a streaming service, it's like it's streaming 24/7. Like you can imagine, it's kind of like quantum mechanics, that whole Schrodinger's cat problem, where if you don't look in the box, is the cat dead or alive? It's both. Maybe it's not a perfect analogy, but like that's in a manner of speaking, like if you think about it this way, if you've got a streaming show in the Schrodinger's cat box, if you don't open the box, somebody's both watching it and not watching it at the same time. Therefore, the residuals and the licensing fees are being paid for it just to keep it on the streaming service. Which is also the reason why a lot of streaming shows are being like taken off the services nowadays, like Disney, Netflix, HBO Max. They're all removing these shows because nobody's watching them. So it's costing these studios just to keep them on there. Yeah. And since they're not deriving any benefit from them, they're like, we're losing money on this. Like, take it off. Like, nobody cares anyway. So
speaking to that, Miss Congeniality is going away on Netflix tomorrow. And I just watched it yesterday for the very first time in years. And just go watch it. Support it. It's a great movie. Lots
Yeah,
of love.
hopefully by the time you see this, it's not already gone, but like maybe you can find
I
it somewhere else.
know. Danny,
Um,
you should go watch it right now. Um, but
I
no, I
think
mean,
I'll find it somewhere. That movie, I've seen that like in two and like
it
multiple
is
places.
such a good movie. So good. Some of Sandra Bullock's best work. It is an icon. Even Michael Caine is in the movie. Come on, people.
The
Um,
recently retired Michael Caine, who like, oh man, he's my favorite Alfred of all time. He's his Italian job, I think, is still the better of the two, not the better than the one that Mark Wahlberg and Charlize Theron were in. So yeah. Anyway, you know what I was gonna say? Like, as far as these issues go, it seems like it's kind of okay. So I was reading the same article that we were talking about earlier. They are like, even though it seems like these last few days the big studio heads aren't as directly involved, they're like staying briefed on everything. They have like these almost like subcommittees, almost like how they have in Congress, like
yeah.
these small groups of people who are specialized to specific topics that are being negotiated on, trying to like knock out these individual topics. So the people who are trying to figure out this residuals number are maybe not the same people trying to figure out the AI issue, but at least it looks like they're trying to tackle these issues not in a broad sense, but very specifically like on a point by point basis, which is a good sign because it means they're very much in the details of everything. And they had a call on Saturday, which was very much a deep dive on all this stuff. They didn't meet on Monday, but it looks like they're making progress. They are, the picketing is still going on. They have the schedule up on the SAG Twitter account. I think, like I mentioned, Duncan Crabtree Ireland was at the picket lines. But yeah, I hope the finish line is close.
The buzzwords going around are both hopeful and cautious, and I think that that is brilliant because it is a far cry from where we were last week, which just seemed like agony. Last
Right.
week just seemed like everybody was really mad and needed to take a deep breath. So,
Yeah.
to simplify matters, it sounded when everybody walked away last week like
I
everybody.
mean, at this point, it was like 2 weeks ago. It was almost 2 weeks ago. And then like the studios were like, oh, wait, they did a U-turn and they were like, you know what? No, let's come back to the table. Let's figure this out.
So the
Cooler
fact
heads
that they're
prevailed.
taking such an incredibly detailed and careful approach, I am super grateful for. I'm sure everybody on the studio side, everybody in the industry, I think is very, very grateful that they are moving forward the way that they are. Things do seem so much better than they were. But
Yeah.
we are still a little bit away from an agreement,
Yeah.
everybody. So we just got to batten down the hatches. Definitely go strike. Definitely. I think they're doing, they are striking tomorrow and Wednesday. The strikes in Los Angeles specifically are going to be limited to Disney, actually.
Yeah. And they have, I mean, I saw the schedule. They even like, they know the New York locations for like HBO and Amazon too. The dates are out there. So if you're part of the union or if you want to strike in solidarity, you can find it on their Twitter or their X account and go participate. Of course, as you can tell in my voice, maybe hear my voice, it's the weather right now in the US across both coasts is very up and down. Like it goes from like 80 degrees to 50 the next day. We're talking Fahrenheit, of course. If you're watching this and you're wondering 80 degrees Celsius, no, it's not that hot. But like just as temperature swings, I'm sure like if you are out there, make sure A, you're staying hydrated.
Mm-hmm.
B, like, only be out there for as long as you want, feel comfortable being out there, and stay safe. And if you're coming down with something, don't go out there and, make other people sick. Like, don't be around other people. If you are sick yourself, you're only going to like cause more harm.
Now it feels like you're calling somebody out for getting you sick. That's
I'm no. I'm in fact, I'm talking about this from my own experience, just being like, I personally am taking the same precautions. So and I know I'm not the only one who I know, at least, and even other people in my various places of work as well as my own family. I'm like, it's going around. It's that time of the year. You got COVID, flu, all kinds of stuff.
actually
So
a bunch of my friends just tested. Well, not my friends, not nobody I've been around directly, people. A bunch
yeah,
of people of my friends on Instagram have posted that they've tested positive for COVID. So definitely just be
yeah,
careful, everybody. They do have
yeah.
really reliable at-home tests. It does seem to be going around again. But just be smart, be safe, get your flu shot if you believe in that. I was supposed to get it 3 weeks ago, but I wasn't feeling very good. And you can't get it when you don't feel good. So
Right. They tell like it's too late now.
yeah.
Like it's
So I've just
that
been
like for
taking
me it's too late.
precautions. Well, I hope you didn't get the flu, but definitely everybody needs to like stay safe. Drink a lot of water, take your vitamins, Psycam helps, echinacea, all the good stuff.
Yes. Yeah. Take your vitamins, say your prayers, you know, like Hulk Hogan would tell you to. But
And go out
yeah,
and have
guys.
fun for Halloween if you're feeling good though.
Yeah.
It's
Um,
Halloween. It's the spooky
and
season.
that pumpkin is amazing.
I made it
It's,
at the
yeah.
pumpkin painting party. You like my little ghosts?
Yeah, I like the ones that are like the two that are together, like they're like having a real party there, like everybody else is by themselves. Uh,
Normally a carved
but
pumpkin. This year we got a little experimental.
it looks good. It looks like very good, like handmade art. I'm sure you can have some. Maybe you can like bring it to like a fall fair somewhere and like, you know, be like, hey, you know,
I'm gonna do trick or treating.
present it.
Not me. I'm
Treat
gonna hand out candy to trick or treat.
can I can right.
I'll stick that up
Yeah.
on the porch.
Just make sure nobody like swipes it because they're like they love it too much. But or maybe if they do, like, you know, they'll make good use of it. But I was gonna say, guys, like one thing to kind of mention here, we like have been we research this stuff before we talk about the SAG-AFTRA strike each and every week, and for us, like, we are usually in the know with a lot of what's happening because we keep up with it on a regular basis. But even for us, it's like hard to kind of like make sense of all the details all the time. And we know on social media, a lot of times things get blown out of proportion. So I know that we usually tell you, you know, stay hydrated, go out and like, you know, do your best to support the actors if you're going to go out picketing. But at the same time, do your best to be well informed. Like, don't get into any arguments with other people over things that you're not like very well informed about, because then it only, you know, it's a waste of your time and energy as well as the other person's. And you know, like a lot of people out there, I think, especially in social media, like misinformation gets spread, small things get blown out of proportion, and there's enough strife in the world as is. I think for us, like, we should, the least we can do is stay well informed on this, so that way when we are having conversations, we're having informed conversations. And if you are debating and you're on one side of the argument and the other person on the other, you're making sure that we are having civilized debate. So that's just the one other thing I would like to remind you of. Of course, we are hoping that the strike does end really, really soon and they come to a deal. They're saying they're getting closer and closer. There's certainly, like, the amount of effort that's being put into it. It shows that they're trying really, really hard. And hopefully by the time we do our next episode of the show, the news will be that they got a deal, and you know, then we will be in the green, and they can have the actors go back out promoting the movies, and then hopefully get production restarted on everything that has been shut down, including all the people who are part of the other unions that aren't even striking here, like along with SAG, but they don't want to cross picket lines. And so, you know, those people like IATSE, like they're out of work too. So we hope that everybody can get back to work soon enough. And if you are coming back here for more information about the SAG-AFTRA strike, make sure to hit the like and subscribe button. We will be covering this story each and every week on the channel.